a day with my book. Chidi sat cross-legged on his favorite reading spot, a warm wooden bench beneath the mango tree in his family's compound. The morning sun filtered through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the pages of his book. This was his daily ritual, a moment he cherished more than anything else in the world. The bench, though old and weathered, held countless memories of adventures he'd experienced through his book's pages. His father had built this bench years ago, specifically for Chidi's reading pleasure. A scholar needs his sanctuary, his father had said with pride in his eyes. Every morning, Chidi's mother would leave a glass of fresh plum juice and a small plate of chin-chin on the small table beside the bench, ensuring her son could read comfortably for hours. Since he was young, books had been Chidi's closest companions. His mother often told stories of how he would fall asleep with picture books clutched to his chest even before he could read. She remembered how, at age 4, he would sit beside his older sister, Chioma, as she did her homework, pretending to read her textbooks by making up stories based on the pictures he saw. Now at 12, his appetite for reading had only grown stronger. Mathematics, literature, science, Historia Euro, it didn't matter what the subject was, if it was written in a book, Chidi wanted to read it. His room had become a miniature library, with books carefully arranged on shelves his father had installed. Each book held a special place in his heart, from the one copy of Things Fall Apart his grandfather had given him to the science encyclopedia he'd received for his last birthday. There he goes again, wasting time with those books. Chidi heard Obi, his childhood friend, shouting from the street. "Come and play football with us, Chidi. These books won't make you strong." Beside Obi stood a group of neighborhood boys, Emeka, Namdi, and Kolichio, all sweating from their morning game at the nearby field. They often passed by Chidi's house, hoping to convince him to join their games. Obi's words stung a little. Lately, more and more of his friends had been teasing him about his reading habits. They couldn't understand why anyone would choose to sit alone with a book when they could be running around, playing games, or climbing trees. Even his sister Chioma sometimes worried that he was spending too much time alone. "Brother," she would say, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, "maybe you should try to balance both reading and playing. Life is about experiencing different things." Though Chioma meant well, Chidi found it hard to explain how books gave him all the different experiences he could ever want. After days of persistent persuasion from Obi, and gentle encouragement from Chioma, Chidi finally decided to give it a try. One sunny afternoon, he reluctantly closed his book about ancient Egyptian pyramids and joined his friends at the neighborhood playground. The book seemed to call out to him as he left, its pages holding secrets about the pharaohs and their magnificent tombs that he was eager to discover. The boys were ecstatic to see him. Obi threw an arm around his shoulders, grinning widely. "Finally, our bookworm has emerged from his cocoon." They quickly divided into teams, and Chidi found himself playing football alongside Obi, with Emeka and Namdi on the opposing team. But as the game progressed, he felt oddly disconnected. While his friends shouted with excitement over goals and tackles, Chidi's mind wandered back to the unfinished chapter about how the pyramids were built. The mathematical precision, the astronomical alignments, the incredible engineering feats, all these thoughts competed for his attention while the football rolled past his feet. He tried to focus on the game, but his heart wasn't in it. The ball rolled past him several times as he caught himself thinking about the mathematical precision of the pyramid's construction. His teammates grew frustrated, and even Obi stopped encouraging him. Kolechi, who was refereeing the game, kept shooting him sympathetic looks. After an hour that felt like an eternity, Chidi politely excused himself and walked home. With each step away from the playground, he felt lighter, as if a weight was being lifted from his shoulders. The sounds of his friends' shouts and laughter faded behind him, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant songs of birds. As soon as he reached home, he rushed to his reading spot, picked up his book, and opened to where he had left off. His mother watched from the kitchen window, a knowing smile on her face. She had always understood her son's love for reading, having been a bookworm herself in her youth. The moment his eyes fell on the words, a familiar sense of peace washed over him. The world of ancient Egypt came alive in his mind, the architects planning their magnificent structures, the workers carefully placing each massive stone block, the pharaohs overseeing their eternal monuments rising from the desert sands. In his imagination, he could feel the hot desert wind, hear the calls of the workers, and see the gleaming white limestone casing stones being fitted into place. That evening, as the sun set and the cool breeze rustled through the mango leaves, Chidi smiled to himself. He understood something important: everyone finds joy in different things. For some, like Obi and the others, it might be football or climbing trees, but for him, it was the wonderful words he discovered within the pages of his books. His father came out to the bench and sat beside him. "I saw you at the playground today," he said softly. "And I saw you return to your books. You know, son, there's a saying, the bird that knows its path never gets lost in the forest." Chidi nodded, understanding the wisdom in his father's words. Later, his mother called him in for dinner, and as he marked his page, Chidi felt grateful. He was thankful for his books, for the knowledge they contained, and for the adventures they took him on. He was grateful for his family who understood and supported his passion, even when others didn't. Most importantly, he was thankful for knowing who he was, a boy who found his greatest happiness in reading. From that day forward, Chidi never again felt the need to apologize for his love of books. When his friends called him to play, he would politely decline, confident in his choice. Sometimes, he would share interesting facts he'd learned with them, and gradually, they began to respect his different interests. Obi even borrowed a book from him once, though he returned it the next day, claiming it was too quiet for his taste. In his reading sanctuary under the mango tree, surrounded by the scent of his mother's plum juice and the comfort of his father's bench, Chidi had found his perfect playground. It existed in the endless pages of his beloved books. And in staying true to himself, he had discovered the most important lesson of all, that the greatest adventure is being exactly who you are meant to be. One morning, while reading the local newspaper his father had left on the breakfast table, Chidi's eyes caught an interesting advertisement: Young Readers Summit, discover the power of strategic reading at the community center. His heart raced with excitement as he read that the seminar would be led by Professor Adebayo, a renowned educator from the University of Lagos. "Mama. Papa," he called out, his voice trembling with enthusiasm. "Please, can I attend this seminar?" His parents exchanged knowing glances, pleased to see their son's eagerness to learn even more about his passion. On the day of the seminar, Chidi arrived an hour early, clutching his favorite notebook and 3 different colored pens. To his surprise, he wasn't the only young person there. The community center was filled with other children his age, all sharing the same love for books. For the first time in his life, Chidi felt part of a larger community of young readers. Professor Adebayo, a tall man with kind eyes and gray-speckled hair, began the seminar with a question that caught everyone's attention: do you know that there are different times of the day when your brain is most receptive to different types of reading? Chidi sat up straighter, his pen poised over his notebook. The professor explained how early morning hours were perfect for studying complex subjects like mathematics and science, while afternoon hours were ideal for creative reading like literature and poetry. Late evenings, he taught them, were best for light reading and reflection. Reading isn't just about consuming words, Professor Adebayo explained, pacing the room with energetic steps. It's about creating a relationship with knowledge. Just as you wouldn't eat all your meals at once. Just as you wouldn't eat all your meals at once, you shouldn't try to read everything at the same time. The professor introduced them to various reading techniques: scanning, skimming, intensive reading, and extensive reading. He showed them how to create reading schedules that wouldn't just improve their comprehension but would also leave time for other activities. During the lunch break, Chidi met Adana, a girl from a neighboring school who had won several reading competitions. They shared their favorite books and reading spots, and Chidi learned that Adana also had a special place in her house for reading: a window seat overlooking her mother's garden. "I wake up at 5 a.m. every day to read my science books," Adana shared. "That's when my mind is freshest. Then after school, I read stories and poetry. It's like giving different foods to your brain at different times." Armed with this new knowledge, Chidi returned home and immediately began reorganizing his reading schedule. He created a colorful timetable, marking different periods for different types of reading. Early mornings became his time for studying mathematics and science, just as Professor Adebayo had suggested. Afternoons were reserved for history and geography, while evenings became his time for reading stories and literature. To everyone's surprise, especially Obi's, Chidi even allocated some time for physical activities. The body needs exercise to keep the mind sharp, he explained to his friend, remembering Professor Adebayo's words about balanced living. Though he still didn't join the football games, Chidi started taking evening walks while discussing books with his sister Chioma. His new schedule also helped him read more efficiently. He was understanding and retaining information better than ever before. His teachers noticed the improvement, and soon other students began asking him for advice on how to study better. One day, as he sat beneath his mango tree, now with a small clock beside his glass of plum juice to track his reading periods, Obi stopped by again. But this time, instead of calling him to play, he asked, "Chidi, I'm having trouble with my science homework. Professor Adebayo said you've been sharing great study tips at school. Could you help me?" Chidi smiled warmly, moving over to make space on his bench. "Of course. Let me show you how to break it down into smaller parts. It's all about reading the right thing at the right time." As he helped Obi understand his science homework, Chidi realized that the seminar had given him more than just better reading habits. It had given him the confidence to share his love of learning with others. He had found a way to bridge the gap between his world of books and his friend's world of play, creating something new and valuable for everyone. That evening, as he made his final notes for the day, Chidi added a new line to his reading journal: "Knowledge grows when shared, just like the branches of my mango tree spread their shade for everyone who seeks shelter beneath them." His mother, bringing him his evening snack, noticed the contentment on his face. "You've grown so much, my son," she said softly. "Not just in your reading, but in understanding the rhythm of life." Chidi nodded, thinking about how far he had come from the boy who once felt out of place among his friends. Now he had found his perfect balance, still deeply in love with his books, but with a deeper understanding of when and how to make the most of his reading time, and how to share that joy with others. The mango tree swayed gently in the evening breeze, its leaves whispering stories of transformation and growth, as Chidi opened his next book, ready for another adventure in learning. The change began gradually. After helping Obi with his science homework, Chidi noticed more of his friends lingering around his reading spot under the mango tree. First came Namdi, struggling with his history assignment, then Emeka with literature questions. Even Kolechi, who had always claimed books were boring, started showing interest when Chidi explained how reading adventure stories was like watching an action movie in your mind. One Saturday morning, as Chidi arranged his books on the bench, he counted 7 of his friends scattered around the mango tree, each with a book in hand. The sight filled him with joy and purpose. That's when an idea struck him. "Why don't we make this official?" he suggested, standing up with excitement. "We could meet regularly, like a real class. I can share everything I learned from Professor Adebayo about the best times to read different subjects." His friends looked up from their books, intrigued. Obi, who had improved significantly in science since Chidi started helping him, was the first to agree. "Yes. Like our own reading club, but with actual lessons about how to read better." With his parents' blessing, Chidi transformed the space under the mango tree into a learning haven. His father helped him set up a small blackboard against the tree trunk, while his mother sewed cushions for everyone to sit on. Chioma contributed by creating beautiful posters about different reading techniques, which they hung from the lower branches. Chidi named it the Mango Tree Reading Academy. He remembered everything Professor Adebayo had taught him and adapted it for his friends. He created simple schedules for each of them, considering their different interests and strengths. "Reading isn't just about passing exams," he would explain during their first session, channeling Professor Adebayo's enthusiasm. "It's about discovering new words, understanding different perspectives, and growing as a person." For Obi, who loved sports, Chidi found books about famous footballers and athletes. This helped Obi understand that reading could connect to his passions. Soon, Obi was devouring biographies of his favorite players, learning not just about their achievements but also their struggles and perseverance. Namdi, who had always been curious about how things worked, discovered popular science books. His eyes would light up as he read about space exploration and technological innovations. "Did you know," he would announce excitedly during their sessions, "that astronauts have to exercise 2 hours every day in space?" Kelechi, the former skeptic, found his niche in mystery novels. "It's like being a detective," he explained to the others. "Each page gives you new clues to solve the puzzle." Emeka, inspired by their success, suggested they create a small library system. They each contributed books from home, carefully cataloging them in a notebook. Chidi taught them about taking care of books, using bookmarks instead of folding pages, and keeping their hands clean while reading. The group grew. Children from neighboring compounds started asking if they could join. Soon, the space under the mango tree was filled with young readers every weekend. They even started a Book of the Week tradition, where each member took turns recommending their favorite reads to the group. Chidi's mother would prepare light refreshments for everyone: eyuro, chin-chin, coconut cookies, and fresh fruit juice. "Learning is always better when shared with friends," she would say, watching proudly as her son guided his peers through their reading adventures. The transformation in the neighborhood was remarkable. Where once you would only hear the thud of footballs and shouts from games, now you could also hear animated discussions about books, stories being read aloud, and excited exclamations when someone discovered something new. One day, Professor Adebayo, who had heard about the Mango Tree Reading Academy from other teachers, paid them a surprise visit. He stood quietly at the compound gate, watching as Chidi explained the importance of reading comprehension to his attentive audience. "You've done something extraordinary here, Chidi," the professor said after the session. "You've not just learned to love reading yourself, you've taught others to love it too. That's the mark of a true leader." Chidi beamed with pride, but quickly shared the credit with his friends. "We all teach each other now, Professor. Yesterday, Obi taught us about the history of the World Cup through his readings, and tomorrow, Namdi is going to explain what he learned about solar systems." As the professor left, he noticed a small sign hanging from the mango tree, carefully painted by Chioma. It read, "Welcome to the Mango Tree Reading Academy, where every page turns into an adventure." That evening, as Chidi sat alone under the mango tree, surrounded by the books and learning materials they'd all collected, he reflected on his journey. From being the solitary reader who felt out of place, to becoming a guide helping others discover the joy of reading, he had found something even more precious than his beloved books: eyuro, the joy of sharing knowledge and watching others grow. He opened his journal and wrote, "The best stories are the ones we create together. Like this mango tree that spreads its branches to shelter us all, knowledge grows stronger when we share it. Every reader who joins us adds a new chapter to our story." The sun set on another successful day at the Mango Tree Reading Academy, and Chidi smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new books, new discoveries, and new adventures to share with his friends.